There we go. I always forget about that light. So, I was going to do a quick book review on David Goggins' book called Can't Hurt Me. He's a Navy SEAL, but the book itself brought back so many memories about my own time in the armed forces. But I thought it might be more interesting instead if I tell a story about my time in the armed forces, which I thought was like super interesting. So I guess that's what I'll go with. Yeah. So I'm going back to 2010. 2 seconds actually. It's a bit focus bar. There you go. So I'm going back to 2010, and I spent most of my career in the Middle East. And what was actually happening was we were off the coast of Iraq for years and years. And what would happen is we would dock in Bahrain to basically get more stores and stuff, and kind of hang out there for like a few days, and then go back up to Iraq. And Bahrain has this place there called the NSA Bahrain, and it is the biggest armed forces base in the Middle East. It used to be owned by the British, but we sold it to the Americans, and it's really cool. There's like loads of bars and stuff. There's like an outdoor area where there's like a huge stage where bands play and all that, and where you can sit and drink and stuff. It's so cool. American Armed Forces bases are way better than British ones. British ones are kind of like a prison if you gave them a swimming pool, basically. So it's crazy. And obviously, the American Armed Forces bases, they have so much cool stuff like Taco Bell and all that. So we would always hang out there and go have a few beers with American soldiers and the American Marines and all that. And you would meet like Navy SEALs and things like that. So it was quite interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so what I thought was really interesting about the American Armed Forces was they were totally brainwashed. It was crazy, brainwashed to a ridiculous level. And you would walk about the base, and there would be like intentional like graffiti, like spray painted on the walls and the bars and stuff that said things like "keeping the peace in the Middle East," because they were just incredibly brainwashed to the point that it blew my mind. So I used to think it was quite fun to entertain myself, to try and tell them the truth about the Iraq War. So I would tell them how in the first Gulf War, the Americans killed more British soldiers than they did Iraqis through friendly fire. And they'd be like, no, man, that's not true. That's not true. Because they were so desperate to believe that they're heroes. And I would tell them to Google it, and they would point blank refuse to Google it because they didn't want to know the truth, you know? And I would say to them as well that basically we were the bad guys, and we were there to basically take oil. And they were like, "No, man, we're freedom fighters. We're freedom fighters." And I was like, "Mate, we're me and my boys here. We're literally here to protect the oil platform where the oil's extracted from." And they were like, "What?" And they're like, "No, we're paying for it. We're paying for it." And then I would speak about like 9/11, and I'd be like, "Well, if the people in 9/11, if the people who bombed the Twin Towers, if they were from Saudi Arabia, why are we invading like Iraq and Afghanistan, not Saudi Arabia?" And they were like, obviously it's funded by them. And I'm like, no, rich countries never go to war with rich countries. The Saudis are really rich. So it doesn't make any sense to go to war with them because we might lose. Whereas if you go to war with smaller, poorer countries, then you can take their natural resources and stuff, and you see their brains trying to register it. And oh my god, they just could not let it sink in. It was impossible because they were that brainwashed. And I did think to myself, like, wow, that's so horrible. I felt really sorry for them. And obviously these days, like what's that, 12 years later now, obviously they know the truth and they kind of get it and stuff. But back then, they found it impossible to even comprehend that they weren't heroes. Because when they go home to like a hero's welcome. The Americans make like a way bigger deal out of it than the British do. So it was super interesting. And then one day I noticed we were brainwashed too. And I just didn't realize that we were, as obviously we all like to think we're a little smarter than we are. So I didn't quite realize just how deep this kind of stuff runs. And it started in 2010 when the Conservative government had just gotten into power, and they'd formed a coalition with the Lib Dems. And at this exact time, there was a huge ash cloud that I think it came from Iceland, and it covered the whole of the UK, and so many flights were cancelled, and people were stuck abroad that were on holiday and things like that. And so this was obviously the perfect time for the new government to take decisive action and be the heroes. But what happened was they didn't take decisive action quick enough, and there was loads of trains from the Eurostar running and stuff, and there was loads of flights running and all that. And what they did was they sent the navy to France to pick up people, and they basically paid these people to stay in France and not get on their flights for the navy to pick them up, to then return to England where there was photographers waiting to take photos, and then basically the press would give this like pro conservative Lib Dem kind of slant, where basically they just came in power and they were instantly decisive and being heroic and saving the day. Now, how do I know this? So basically, what happened was Liam Fox and some other people in the government and some people who were high up in the military went with David Beckham to Camp Bastion. Now, at the time, Liam Fox was the Secretary of Defense. I think he was the Secretary of Defense for about a year. So they went to Camp Bastion, where basically they gave that speech to the soldiers and told them that basically, that's what we did. But we're telling you this so that you know that you're special because you're the MOD. So we wouldn't lie to you. So here you have this knowledge. And then they came to Bahrain and they basically, we all met on this one big RFA ship. And they told us this story as well about the ash cloud and about how they sent in the Navy and basically faked the photo op to be the heroes. And they're like, we're telling you that because you're special and because you're the MOD, basically. And everybody sat there thinking, yeah, we're special. We get to know this stuff, right? Even me for a few minutes. Then I was like, wait a minute. We would have found this out anyway because our mates on those ships would have told us. They would have known from the customers. So we would have known this anyway. But they were saying, you get to know this because you're special, right? Basically, as a way to kind of trick us. And then they went in depth about how there was rumors of, rumors of redundancies that were about to happen within the armed forces. And basically, they were saying those rumors are not true. So they just said, here's the thing that we're doing to the public to basically drum up support for us to make us look good. We're telling you it's a lie, so you trust us. And now here's something which we're telling you that you should believe because we told you that this other thing that other people think is true is a lie. So they're basically telling us something we would have figured out anyway in order to make us believe them so as that we would then believe the next thing that they said. Now, anybody with half a brain would have thought to themselves, right, we would have figured that out, but most people didn't think that. And then they would think, why is it so important for you to make us believe that? Because if it's true, then you wouldn't have to try so hard to convince us, right? You would think, right? So the first thing they did is tell us that they lied to the public. Crazy. And basically, so what happened was actually like a few months later, we did get letters saying that there was going to be redundancies. That basically it would start as voluntary redundancies, and then after that, what would happen is that if not enough people came forward, then they would force people to be made redundant. So basically, the government, as soon as they came in power, lied to the public, lied to the armed forces, and then told the armed forces the truth about something in order to tell them another lie in the hope that people wouldn't figure it out. I guess they were worried in case too many people started looking for new jobs there and then. It was such a bizarre thing. And I remember leaving and I was thinking, this is a bit fishy. And you would think to yourself, well, surely everybody else there figured it out, right? But no, this is the thing. If you think about your average person, right? Your average person is pretty stupid, right? Then if you think about like the fact that 50% of the people on the planet are more stupid than your average person. So people generally didn't work it out. It was crazy. And yeah, so it's quite simple for the brainwashing to be done. And it's wild. I mean, for a few minutes myself, I was sat there nodding my head and like, yeah, you're right. We're special. Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, wait a minute. There's something not right here. It's so bizarre. But yeah, I just thought I'd share that because I thought that was super interesting. The way that we like to think that we're smarter than others. So we think we're smarter than the Americans. And then at the same time, we ignore the fact that we ourselves are being brainwashed by our government who are planting these stories in the media that we're just going to read and take in like soup and believe it all. And Yeah, it's easy to judge others for being brainwashed whilst being blissfully unaware that you are yourself. And I mean, although I know that the government brainwashes to a certain extent using the media, whereas the Americans must have known that themselves to a certain extent as well. I mean, now I guess the smart thing to do is to not think, "Oh, wow, we're so much more clever than the Americans because they believe everything," rather than accept that we're probably a little ignorant ourselves and brainwashed ourselves to a certain extent by the media constantly. And unless you choose to not trust everything in the media, then to a certain extent we are. It's it's pretty crazy. I just thought that was like super fascinating that the first thing they would do is try and brainwash us and trick us and lie to us to basically make themselves appear heroes and then basically try to stifle a leak by then telling more lies. Crazy, crazy stuff. But yeah, if you want to hear my thoughts on the David Goggins Can't Hurt Me, it's quite a good book. Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll do that later. And yeah, I'm procrastinating again, so I'm gonna go back to work. Catch you later.